Good morning. Now, Ms. Graham, the witness today is Nicole Short, is that right?
That's correct, yes.
Good morning, Ms. Short. You're going to be asked questions by Ms. Graham, whom you've met before. If in the course of your evidence you want a break, just tell me and we can easily have a break.
Okay.
So I'll start by putting on the oath. Would you raise your hand, please, and say the words after me? I swear by Almighty God
I swear by Almighty God
that I will tell the truth,
that I will tell the truth,
the whole truth,
the whole truth,
and nothing but the truth.
and
Take your
nothing
time.
but the truth.
Thank you. Ms. Graham.
Good morning, Miss Short.
Morning.
Hello. Do you want to try and pull that microphone a
Yeah,
little bit
hold
closer so it doesn't, so your water doesn't spill?
Yeah.
Because that's the sort of thing I would do, and then the water would be everywhere.
Yeah.
And we'll try and, you can pull it towards your mouth if we want to be able to hear what you say.
Okay.
Then I won't have to repeat things and go over them again.
Yeah.
I'll do the same on my end. Now, your name is Nicole Short,
Yeah.
and you're a former police constable,
Yeah.
and
Sorry.
do you have some hankies there? Yeah. That question doesn't normally elicit a response like that, Miss Short.
Sorry.
You okay?
Yeah.
We'll
Yeah.
just take our time today. There's
Okay.
absolutely no need to rush.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm going to ask you what age you are.
36.
Thank you. And we've got all your contact details, so I don't need to ask you anything about that today. And first of all, I want to make sure that you've got everything in front of you that you might need. So let's go through that. I don't know if you've watched other evidence, but
Yeah.
you have. Good. So you know the procedure then. There's your inquiry statement, and that should be in front of you in the black folder.
Yeah.
And then I'm going to, when I refer to any particular paragraphs, on the screen in front of you,
Yeah.
the paragraph will be brought up by Miss Taylor Smith. And at the same time, if you want to see what's around it, you can just look at the hard copy if that's easier for you.
Okay.
And in the black folder in front of you, there should be some other things. Let's just go through these now. So there should be a Perk Statement 253. So that's a statement from the 13th of May, 2015. So it's 10 days after. Have you got that one? Yeah, they've all got post-its on them.
Yeah.
And that was taken by John Sallins of the Police Federation.
Yeah.
And do you see where that was taken on the front page? Do you remember where it was taken?
I think it was at our house.
At your house,
Yeah.
okay. And what was the purpose of giving that statement? Do you remember? That was the first statement.
Just to give an account to our legal representatives of what happened and and get it down on paper, you know.
And that was Mr. Sallins, is that from the Scottish Police Federation?
Well, yeah, he probably came under that, but he worked with Peter Watson.
So you actually worked with your solicitor?
Yeah,
But it says there John Sallins Police Federation?
yeah.
So was Mr. Sallins from the SPF, or was he working for your lawyer?
It was, as far as I know, anyway, he was working for my lawyer.
Okay, thank you. And did you spend some time giving that statement?
Yeah.
Do you remember how long?
No.
No,
No,
that's
sorry.
fine. That's absolutely fine. And then the second thing you should have in your black folder is Perk 254. And this is a later statement, and you'll see it's coming up on the screen, but you should also have it in your folder. And it's dated the 4th of June 2015.
Yeah.
You have that one at 13:45. And it was taken by Investigator John Ferguson and DSI Margaret Ann Hedrick.
Yeah.
And that was taken on that day. And Investigator John Ferguson, was he from Perk?
Yeah.
Right. And again, what was the purpose of giving that statement? Do you remember?
To provide Perk with the details of what happened that morning.
Okay. And then the third statement is 255. And this is dated the 9th of June 2015, 12:55.
Yeah.
So that's just over a month after the events.
Yeah.
And it was taken again by Investigator John Ferguson and DSI Margaret Ann Hedrick, but this time at the Police Federation offices in Livingston.
Yeah. Yeah, that's right.
And again, what was the purpose of giving this statement?
That was a continuation on from the first statement I'd given, because I was at the police treatment centre with the first statement, and then that took all day, so then we continued it on the 9th of June, but I wasn't at the police treatment centre, I'd finished my stay there, so it was at the Police Federation offices in Livingston for that one.
So the statement dated the 4th of June that you gave to Mr. Ferguson and DSI Hedrick was taken at the treatment centre, and then you continued to give that statement on the 9th of June.
Yeah.
But you'd left the treatment centre by then.
Yeah, that's right.
And then we've got another one, Perk 00256. And this is the fourth statement, dated the 16th of June 2015. So this is about 6 weeks after. And this is taken over the phone and given to Investigator John Ferguson.
Yeah.
And this was, what was the purpose of this one? Do you remember that one?
Yeah, he wanted to clarify a couple of points in my statement that I'd given.
So, and that was just done over the phone?
Yeah, yeah.
And then can we look at the fifth statement, Perk 61, please? And this is an affidavit, and it's dated the 30th of August 2018. So it's more than 3 years after. You'll see in the first line, at Glasgow on the 30th of August 2018, in the presence of your solicitor and notary public. And that was a formal affidavit that was signed.
Yeah.
And again, what was the purpose of this being prepared?
I think that was for to be ill health retired from the police.
Okay. And that was signed by you in front of a notary public.
Yeah.
And then finally, you've got the statement that you gave to the inquiry. Now, I don't know if that'll be at the front of your pile or at the back. And you were sent nearly 100 questions by the inquiry team, weren't you?
Yeah.
And asked if you could prepare your own statement that answered all of those questions.
Yeah.
And that's what you did. Now, we'll see it's headed up on the screen, response to a Rule 8 request. So it was a formal request from the inquiry team under a particular rule. But can I just call this your inquiry statement?
Yeah.
Are you happy
that's
with that?
fine. Yeah.
Thank you. And how long did you spend preparing that statement?
7 hours, roughly.
Did you have to have some breaks?
Yeah, a lot of breaks.
Okay. Now, can we look at the final, the last page? You were asked to add a paragraph in at the end. And it says, I believe the facts stated in this witness statement are true. I understand that this statement may form part of the evidence before the inquiry and be published on the inquiry's website.
Yeah.
And that was added in, and then in your hard copy in front of you, I had to sign that. We've redacted your signature at the moment.
Okay.
And I was assisted last week by a witness who said that was signed on the 7th of April this year.
Yeah, that's probably right.
But with all of the statements and the affidavit that you've given, were you doing your best to tell the truth about the events on the 3rd of May 2015 and doing your best to give an accurate and full recollection of what happened?
Yes. Yeah.
Thank you. I might refer to some of those statements again, but I'll let you know which one.
Yeah,
when.
okay.
And then we heard from your QC that on the opening statement day that you're determined to assist the inquiry
Yes.
in every way you can, and you're here because you want to give evidence to the inquiry.
Yes.
And does that remain the position today?
Yes. Yeah.
Thank you very much. So are you happy you've got everything in front of you? I've gone
Yeah.
through it all now.
Yeah.
Okay, so as well as that black folder with all your statements, you should also have in front of you a spreadsheet,
Yeah.
which is a combined audio and video timeline. You feel free to have a wee look at it at the moment. And you've probably, if you've watched other evidence
Yeah.
on the TV, you'll realise it's a timeline of the events,
Yeah.
and it goes with some footage that we have.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, that's right.
So you can feel free to dip into that if you wish
Okay.
when we're watching the footage.
Yeah.
You can just use that as you want. But with the footage, what I'll normally do is I'll play it through once, let you see it properly
Yeah.
on the screen, although I appreciate you might have watched it on the telly, and then we'll go back and I'll ask you some questions about it.
Okay.
Okay, great. So are you ready to go?
Yeah.
Thank you. What I'm going to do first of all then is I'm going to play from phase 2 into phase 3 of the enhanced video timeline, and Miss Taylor Smith will bring that up on the screen, and we're going to play footage from 7:16:22 to 7:20:39, and all we're going to do at this stage is listen to some of the airwaves transmissions that we can hear on the footage before you arrived.
Okay.
And we'll just play that right through to 7:20:39.
Okay.
And then when I come back, I'm going to ask you some questions.
Yeah.
So feel free to listen to it,
Yeah.
and you can also look at the spreadsheet if you would like. Thank you very much.
For 1 Charlie. Right. I need you to divert to Henry Road, a disturbance ongoing, male armed with a knife, African-looking male chasing someone that may be carrying a knife, described as big with muscles, about 6 feet tall, wearing a white t-shirt and dark coloured jeans. There's an individual coming in about standby. Yeah, I'll say that's another grade 1 call coming in for the Victoria Road, Kirkcaldy, male armed with a knife. Male in possession of a large knife, a black male wearing white t-shirt and jacket, walking along the street with a large knife in his right hand, about a 9-inch blade.
Control for 411, I want all units to attend that, bear in mind officer safety. Was there an ARV and a dog as well, please?
Control from 41 Alpha. Go ahead.
We're heading there. That's 2 separate locuses. We'll go to Victoria Road before Henry Road. The last call can be monitored by Romeo Victor.
Roger.
Papa Whiskey 101 and 104 also tender.
Alpha Control from 41 Alpha. Can we try to get house numbers of the 2 informants, please?
Roger, 1 is... The second caller is from That's a further call advising the male is in Hayfield Road near to Gallagher's pub.
That's the take a bit more south. I think the Victoria Road call, Lucas, is probably incorrect.
Control from 401. Is there any update of ARV and dog units over?
I believe a dog unit is en route.
Cromwell Review, we're organising an ARV as well. Stand by.
Alpha Control from 41 Alpha.
Go ahead.
Victoria Road probably was taken Lucas, Hayfield Road.
Roger, Hayfield Road. That was the last place he was seen, near Gallagher's pub.
Sure, that's us approaching Lucas.
And that's another call saying he was seen walking in the direction of the hospital in the middle of the road.
Yes, yes. That's on Hayfield Road heading in that direction.
Inspector Stewart, area control room to the set attending. I'm monitoring this obviously from an ARV perspective. If you get sightings of the male, you need to make an initial assessment yourself and feed back to me straight away, and I'll listen out on the channel.
Control for Bravo, do we have a description? I missed it.
He's described as male, black, well-built, 6 foot tall, wearing a white.
We've just run over slightly there. So you've listened to all of those airways messages. Can I just ask you one or two questions about the messages to begin with? So in your inquiry statement, there wasn't any mention by you of knowing that all the units were going to be attending, all units. Can you explain what was your understanding of that, all units to attend?
That all available units that were within Kirkcaldy Police Station would attend, and normally that was a reflection of the severity of the call.
And how many units did you expect to attend? Did you have any impression that morning of how many people would come?
If there were like 3, I would expect my whole team to come along. It went out my mind that the CID were on that morning, but obviously I now know that they attended too. But in the first instance, my whole team.
Who was in your whole team?
Do you need names? No. Just,
yes, you can give me names.
There was,
if you remember.
Yeah, there was Alan Payton, Craig Walker, Alan Smith, Kaylee Good, Danny Gibson, James McDonough, myself and Ashley Tomlinson. I think that's...
But if they were available, you would expect all of them to come?
Yeah.
Thanks. And then in paragraph 13 of your inquiry statement, so we'll get that up on the screen. It's on page 2. And it says, I've been asked if I felt I had adequate training for dealing with this incident. In my view, I think that I had adequate training, but we didn't have adequate support from specialist units, for example, dog unit or firearms unit. Can I ask you a few questions about that paragraph? Yeah. When you say you didn't have adequate support from specialist units, you've obviously given us an example of the dog unit. You say dog unit off firearms unit.
Yeah, I think that's meant to say or.
Yeah. I thought that. So a dog unit or a firearms unit. We've heard the expression ARV, armed response vehicle.
Yeah.
Is that what you mean when you say firearms unit?
Yeah.
Right. And why was it you didn't think you had adequate support that day?
I've just got this memory of it never being confirmed. Actually, that's it. For certain they're on the way, and I've got a memory of the dog unit being in Edinburgh, and just thinking how far away that was to where we were.
Can I ask you to look at your first statement of the 13th of May, so that's Perk 253. And on page 2, page 4, I think, sorry. Page 4, final paragraph. No, that's not right. No, sorry. This is my first attempt at giving you a page number, and I've written down the wrong number, but it is page 2. I was right the first time. Page 2, and it's paragraph 6. Yeah. And it starts around halfway there. It's towards, there it is. I can see it on the screen. Can you see it on the screen? Around halfway there, I remember saying to Ash, I hate calls like this. And then I remember the controller coming back on and saying that the dog was on its way from Edinburgh. My heart sank at this point. Now, Ash, is that a reference to Ashley Tomlinson?
Yeah.
That's who you were with that day?
Yeah.
And you say you hate calls like this. Did you always hate calls where it was a knife incident?
Yeah, especially a knife.
Why was that?
Just because I felt that because of my build, essentially, if I was to get stabbed, it would probably increase the chances of it being fatal, and it only needs to hit one wrong part of your body, and that's it.
I was going to come on to it later, but you're 5'1",
Yeah.
aren't you? And at the time, I think you were nearly 8 stone.
Yeah.
And is that similar to what you are today?
I've put on a wee bit of weight today, but I'm still the same height.
Yeah. So, when you say your heart sank, how were you feeling?
I just honestly felt like it was. I just thought it's just us. It's just us that are. I've got to face this, and then obviously the more and more calls that came in, kind of solidified in my mind that we were, that there was a male running about with a knife.
Would it have been an option for you to wait for the dog unit?
Personally, I didn't feel so at that time. I felt with the number of calls coming in thick and fast, the public were clearly scared and wanting us to attend to protect them and make the area safe again. I just remember the urgency to get there so that nobody would be hurt.
And you mentioned the number of calls. What was it about the number of calls that you were thinking?
What do you mean, sorry?
Well, you've talked about the number of calls. We've heard you couldn't actually hear the calls coming in, the 999 calls.
Yeah.
That's right, is it?
Yeah.
But what was it about the number of calls that made this different to a normal knife incident?
It was. I just remember the controller saying, "That's another call coming in. That's another one. That's another one," and normally you would get a call, and you would have details passed, and then you would attend and see what is presented to you when you're there. But the fact that it was just several independent members of the public made me think this is kind of in progress, if you like, and I had no reason to doubt that due to the volume of numbers coming in quickly.
So you didn't think it was a hoax?
No.
Can you tell me who was in charge of attending this incident and getting it organised? Do you remember?
Well, Ash and I were dispatched initially. In terms of dispatch, it could be initially the contact centre, but then our supervisor could jump in and, say, actually, I want yous all to go. So yeah, a bit of both, actually.
And who was your supervisor that day?
Scott Maxwell.
He was an acting police sergeant.
Yeah.
And did we hear him making an airwave transmission, requesting all units attend, and is there an ARV and a dog unit as well, please?
Yeah.
Did you remember hearing that? That's at 7:17:23.
Yeah.
Did you express any of these concerns to Acting Police Sergeant Maxwell?
No.
Did you express any of those concerns to the control room through your police radio?
No.
And was there a reason for that?
Just really being sent to that, I would say an update. Wait a minute. We really would go along to see what was presented to us when we attended. We would get the initial call, go and attend, see what was there, and then feed back the facts of what we saw on the ground.
And who would you feed that back to?
We'd feed that back to the I just want to call it the call centre. Like, do you know what I mean?
We've heard it
yeah,
called
the control room. Yeah, that's it. But also in the knowledge that sergeants and other staff would be listening into the Kirkcaldy channel, so they would also hear it.
So if you used your radio, you could make an airwaves transmission, and the feedback would have the dual purpose of communicating that to the area control room as well as Sergeant Maxwell and other members of the team.
Yeah.
Thank you. And what was your understanding on your way to Hayfield Road about the availability of an ARV?
Well, as I said, it never really... It was requested, but to my knowledge, it was never really confirmed. There was no solid, definite airwave message to say, right, that's them on the way, and then possible further instructions regarding that. It was never certain. I knew that it had been requested. But
did you consider waiting for an ARV at that time?
No. No.
And why not?
Because of the number of calls that were coming in from the public, there was a real sense of urgency to get there. Like I say, the number of calls made this feel like this is really happening. Like I say, them all independent. I've no reason, or I had no reason to disbelieve that. So, given that the public were in such a state of fear and alarm, they were wanting us to go there to make the area safe again. So to hang back would increase, in my mind, the risk of somebody getting hurt, and I didn't want that at all to happen at all.
Okay, thank you. Let me ask you about PC Tomlinson.
Mm.
How had you worked with PC Tomlinson previously?
No, this was actually our first shift on together, but I knew him obviously for being part of the team, but we'd never worked together before.
So part of the team, but you'd never been paired with
Yeah.
PC Tomlinson.
Yeah.
And can I ask you, what difference, did you know the local area? Did you know Hayfield Road?
A wee bit. Initially, when the call came in, I'll admit I couldn't think where it was, so I grabbed the keys for the vehicle we were driving, and I gave them to Ash because he had worked there longer than I had. So I said, "You'll know where you're going." But obviously, when I got there, I was like, "Right," but yeah.
Had you worked in Kirkcaldy for a while?
2 months.
2 months. So where did you work before you moved to Kirkcaldy?
I had a secondment with the traffic road policing, and before that I worked with the Sheriff Court. And do you want me to tell you?
No, that's
right.
fine.
Okay.
So how well did you actually know Kirkcaldy?
Not as well as the area I stay. I was still trying to find my feet. I knew some, main places and things like that, but I was getting there, put it that way.
But you said PC Tomlinson had been there longer than you. Do you
Yeah.
remember how long PC Tomlinson had worked in Kirkcaldy?
I don't. I know he was in his probation, and I know he wasn't just started that. He was kind of maybe halfway through, but I couldn't be certain. Like,
Okay, that's fine.
Okay.
But you believed at that time that he knew Kirkcaldy better than you.
yeah.
Was it it wasn't the first time you'd attended a knife incident
No.
in your year's service?
No.
And you've described how you were feeling on that day and your concerns about danger to the public.
Yeah.
Did you feel that way with every knife incident, or was this one different?
This one was different.
And you've mentioned the number of calls. Was it the number of calls that made the difference to you?
Initially, yeah.
And when you say initially,
Yeah.
what else made the difference to you on the journey to Hayfield Road?
I don't know. Sorry, could you ask that again? I don't know.
You've said initially
Aye.
it was the number of calls.
Yeah.
And was that really the main thing on the way to Hayfield Road, or was there anything else that made you feel the way you were feeling?
A large knife. Description of that. Well, that's probably it. Yeah, initially in the van on
So
the way there.
The size of the knife was a
Yeah.
big factor
Yeah.
as well. And how can you remember now how many knife calls you'd attended before the 3rd of May 2015?
It's a long time, but for the top of my head, two, yeah.
And in either of those two, had you had to use your baton?
No,
Had you had to use your spray?
no.
And how did you avoid using your baton or your spray in those two other calls that you attended?
Verbal commands, verbal instructions to the person.
Could you explain to the chair what that means?
Yeah, just basically engaging with them, telling them to drop the knife until they did, essentially, and you would get some sort of reply, usually, sometimes abuse, sometimes you would get a wee snippet of the story or what had happened that night, and then it would be like, right, well, I just need you to drop that now, and then we'll talk about it, but I really need you to stop waving that about, or something like that. And then, in that case, in one of the cases, the two large knives were actually thrown at us, didn't hit us, but you know, after saying like to drop it, you know, you got a wee bit of verbal abuse, and then that they were eventually dropped.
So 2 previous incidents,
Yeah.
and the knife was visible in both of those when you arrived.
Yeah,
And were actually thrown at you.
yeah,
And then, but you'd spoken to them
yeah,
to get them to drop the knife.
yeah, yeah.
And had both of those, on the previous 2 incidents, had both of those complied with your verbal command?
Yeah.
And was it a command? Were you shouting, or was it a request to drop the knife?
I'd definitely say there was raised voices, given the fact that we could see, or I could see the knife. It was definitely sorry, I lost my words. Like a firm command to drop that, because it's dangerous. You know, it's aggravated by the fact that they're holding a knife, and yeah, so the instructions would be firmer, and your voice would be raised, just to kind of hit it home that that's what you need them to do, and right now type of thing.
And in your statement, you mentioned that your height, you used your height to your advantage with approaching men, and sometimes your stature could allow you to de-escalate a situation. Can you explain that to the chair?
Yeah, I'd been in quite a few kind of situations where maybe a tall male going to speak to another male who was upset or whatever would in some way, shape or form, and for whatever reason, aggravate the situation. They would sometimes seem to get more angry, but you know, on a few occasions I would go in and it would be like, for example, like, I'll speak to you, Hem, but I'm no effing speaking to him, you know. And then it was like, right, that's that line of communication open. Right, let's just take it for here, a step at a time, and find out what's happened.
And you could then work with that.
Yeah,
And that open communication would allow you to persuade the person to comply.
yeah, or at least kind of calm down, and you know, first and foremost.
So de-escalation is all about calming situations down.
Yeah,
And that's something that you had done previously
yeah,
on quite a few occasions, or a few occasions?
a few.
Few.
Yeah.
And when you were on your way to Hayfield Road, I'm interested in whether it made you feel more confident that you'd been officer safety trained and you had equipment with you, and you had PC Tomlinson with you, and he had his equipment with you. Did that make you feel more confident about dealing with the situation?
Yeah, to a degree. But it didn't take away for the fact that it was still a dangerous situation we were going to.
Okay. What difference, if any, did it make that you've said in your inquiry statement at paragraph 5 actually that PC Walker and PC Payton were in front of you
Yeah.
en route?
Mm-hmm.
And what difference did that make to you, that you knew that, as you described them, 2 of the most experienced members of our team were going to be there as well? So that's, you see paragraph 5, you see that. So Walker and Payton were 2 of the most experienced, or 2 of the most experienced members of your team, and they were going to be there. How did that make you feel on the way?
Reassured, I would say.
And what about the fact that all units who were available were going to attend? How did that make you feel?
Further reassured, yeah.
Had you, in the previous 2 incidents that you dealt with, the knife incidents, had you ever had to resort to a restraint of the person?
Yeah.
Yeah. Describe that, please.
The one that I've been telling you about, the 2 knives, he threw them up in the air, like, towards us, and then he was thereafter placed in cuffs. There was a small struggle, and then he was taken into custody.
Right. When you say a small struggle,
Yeah.
can you tell us what you mean?
He was essentially resisting having the handcuffs applied.
Right. And how was he resisting that?
Trying to break free from our grip, like holding his arms, kicking, shouting abuse, spitting.
But you managed to get the handcuffs on
Yeah.
him. Right. And once that happened, you had control of that person, did you?
Yeah.
Was that handcuffs to the rear?
Yeah.
Yeah, thanks. Can I ask you, before we move on, I'd like to ask you one other airwave message. It might be easier if you have a look at the spreadsheet for this. And it's the airwave message shortly prior to your arrival, which is 7:20:13. So it's on, oh sorry, it's page 3. I'm giving you the wrong information. Page 3, about a third of the way down, 7:20:13. Do you have that?
Yeah.
And it says it's an airwave transmission from ACR Inspector Stewart. So Inspector Stewart, we've heard, was in the control room. And I don't think I'll need to play this, thank you. He's monitoring this obviously from an ARV perspective. If you get sightings of the male, you need to make an initial assessment yourself and feedback through straight away, and I'll listen out on the channel. Now, you've already mentioned feedback, and I'm just interested what you understand feedback to be. Would you rather listen to this
Feedback.
on the footage? Would
No, I
you
see
okay?
it now. Feedback to be telling them what is going on, what you see.
Right. And you've confirmed in your inquiry statement that you heard this message
Yeah.
when you were on the way to Hayfield Road.
Yeah.
And you understood what feedback was.
Yeah.
And did you understand why the area control room might be looking for that information?
Just given the details of the call, also involving the knife, obviously they can't see what we face, they only hear the calls that are coming in. So.
We've heard that they're in Bilston Glen,
Mm.
actually, in a completely different place.
Yeah.
And did you consider that that was something that you personally needed to respond to?
If I got them, well, yeah, it would be something that we would do when we got to calls, is provide an update.
Now, did you understand that it was possible for the area control room to take charge or have command of the incident as it developed?
Yes. Yeah.
So you understood that at some point they could sort of take control,
Yeah.
even though they were at a remote location?
Yeah.
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 Is that something you would have liked them to do?
I think that, I mean, hearing I don't know how to answer that, because there'd already been a request for an armed response unit and a dog unit to attend. So that was kind of as far as we could go at that point, but like I say, nothing was confirmed. There was no definite confirmation of them definitely attending.
Okay.
Does that answer your question? Sorry, I don't know.
That's fine. I'm going to move on, and I'm going to go back to the footage. So I'm going to go back and play some of that from 7:20:39. And we'll just get that up on the screen. And I'm going to ask that we play from 7:20:39 to 7:21:02. So it's just a short period.
Okay.
And we can watch it. So tell me if you need to see it again.
Okay.
And then I'll come back and ask some questions about that period. And if you want, you can have a look at the spreadsheet in front of you. And that starts at page 3. 7:20:39 is towards the bottom of page 3. Thank you.
Have a description. I missed it.
He's described as male, black, well-built, 6 foot tall, wearing a white t-shirt, dark-coloured jeans and carrying a very large knife.
6. Monday 4, control keep off us. Somebody activated the emergency button.
Thank you. Right. Do you want to see that little snippet of footage again? Would that help you? We don't have to. I can just go through and ask some questions.
Yeah, but if I need to see it again, I will see.
You'd like to see it again?
No, just if I do.
No, you're happy if I ask questions.
Yeah.
Great, thank you. So, can you look at 7:20:39 maybe on the spreadsheet?
Yeah.
And we could maybe go back to that period and pause it. And do we see that there's a smaller van appeared by this time?
Yeah.
And it's parked closer to the roundabout at Henry Road than the larger police van that's there. You see that? And tell us, who was in that van?
Myself and PC Tomlinson.
And you've told us that PC Tomlinson was driving?
Yeah.
And so, can you look at the Reconstruction tile, please?
Yeah.
And now it's in the middle of the screen at the top. And again, I'm going through this quickly because you've said you've watched some of it on the screen,
okay.
but if you're not sure, just ask me.
Yeah.
And you'll see the roundabout on the left-hand side.
Yeah.
That's a 3D reconstruction of the roundabout we see on the CCTV on the left. And then we see a smaller white police van has been recreated on the Reconstruction tile. And that's the van that PC Tomlinson was driving.
Yeah.
And you said in your statement that was called the fish van.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was just what it was known as at the station. It would be like the big van and the wee fish van. It was just the name that everybody seemed to call it, and everyone knew what you meant as well. So
yeah, because we all remember white fish vans turning up round the streets. A smaller white van with the doors at the back.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. And then in front of that, there's the larger van. We've heard that's a transit.
Yeah.
And we've also heard evidence that was driven by PC Walker.
Yeah.
You accept that. And then just the bus stop there. So it says that the police van stops at 7:20:39, and it certainly appears that way on the screen. You happy that's where the police van stopped?
My van. Well,
Your
the van I
van,
was in.
fish
Yeah,
van.
yeah. Happy with that.
And Tomlinson would have then got out the driver's side of that, and you would have got out the passenger side.
That's right.
Then we see, and you can see it at the bottom of page 3 on the spreadsheet, that it says PC Alan Payton's emergency status is turned on.
Yeah.
And that is at 7:20 and 42 seconds. Now, by the time you got out the van, Were you aware that an emergency button had been pressed?
No.
No. So when did you become aware that the emergency button had been pressed by somebody?
I didn't, to be honest. Events unfolded so quickly once I got there that my primary concern was dealing with what was unfolding in front of me.
Okay. Well, let me just ask you a quick question about that. When an emergency button is pressed,
Yeah.
what happens to your radio if somebody else presses the emergency button?
As far as I can remember, I think it vibrates, it beeps, and the screen turns red.
Right. But you weren't aware of that when you were arriving or getting out of the vehicle?
No.
And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to move on to some other images that have been created by a company called Advanced Laser Imaging, ALI, and they're 3D reconstruction images of the scene. So we'll leave this footage for the moment, and either Miss Taylor Smith or Miss Wildgoose will bring those up on the screen. Now, we heard some evidence about these last week, so you may have seen them already on the screen. And you'll see, however, that the transit van, the position of the transit van, has been moved from the ones that you saw on the screen last week, if you did see them. And that was in light of some evidence that was given last week.
Okay.
So let's look at image number 5. And you'll see there the transit vans at the bus stop and the fish vans further along Hayfield Road, closer to the roundabout with Henry Road. So when you got out of the front passenger seat, where did you go?
I stepped onto the pavement and I was facing towards the big transit van.
And what could you see?
I could see Alan and Craig standing, and Mr. Bio was kind of like he was in front of them, so it kind of forms a triangle type of thing.
Right. Well, first of all, is Alan Payton?
Yeah.
And Craig is Craig Walker?
Walker, yeah.
Right. And I wonder, either using this image or if we could look at number 6, you can tell us what you would prefer to use. If we wait right. So you can see in number 6 we get more of an aerial view of the scene in Hayfield Road. Now, do you have a preference? Because what I'm going to ask you to do now is to touch the screen and a small red circle will appear.
Right.
And I'll be asking you to say where was PC Walker, where was PC Payton.
Yeah.
So would you rather use number 6 or would you rather use the previous one? What would be easier for you?
Could I see the previous one again?
Yes, of course. I mean, that may be easier for you.
Yeah, I'll just...
Well,
will
we stick with number 5?
Yeah.
We can
Please.
change it at any time.
Okay.
So we'll stick with image 5, please. And what I'd like you to do, first of all, is you can touch the screen and a red circle will appear. If you're not happy with the position, you just need to keep your finger on it and move it around.
Okay.
If you completely hate it, you can bring it down to the bottom of the screen, we'll ignore it, or Miss Wildgoose can remove it completely.
Yeah.
So I'd like you to point out, when you get out the fish van, where was PC Walker?
He was... I just want to say as well, they were like alongside the van, so I might not, if you could picture where I'm putting it, but have them like alongside the van, if that makes sense. So he was
Right.
kind of,
So,
but further in. Does that make
okay.
sense? Like
Yeah, are
closer
you
to the
talking
van.
about near the front passenger seat door of that transit van?
Yeah, yeah,
So closer to the van than you've been able to show us on the...
yeah.
Right. It may be that we'll be able to get
Yeah.
another image
No worries.
slightly later. But for the purposes right now, it was close to the front passenger seat of the transit van.
Yeah.
And where was PC Peyton?
Just roughly. Oh, sorry.
You can drag it with your finger if you feel more comfortable.
Just put another.
Will we clear this and
Yeah.
start again? That's
Sorry.
easier, isn't it? And do remember we've got image 6 as well if you prefer
Okay.
to do that. So image 1 we're keeping there. Let's try and identify where PC Peyton was.
Mm. Just go with that.
Right. And where was Mr. Bio?
I'm sure he was just on the grass verge.
Okay. So that's to the right.
It was like a triangle. If that makes sense.
Right. So are you content with those
Yeah,
areas?
yeah,
We'll be coming back later today. I don't know if you saw last week we had the benefit of some further images later in the day, and we'll be
Yeah.
able to adjust them around and fine tune them.
no worries.
But at the moment, you've said you're on the pavement at the fish van,
Yeah,
passenger side, and you're looking over in the direction
yeah,
of the transit van. So number 1 is where PC Walker was, near the front
Yeah.
passenger seat of the transit van. Number 2 is PC Peyton, and number 3 is Mr. Bio.
yeah.
What direction was PC Peyton facing in?
He was facing towards Mr. Bio.
What direction was Mr. Bio facing in?
He was facing towards the two of them. Like he was facing PC's Walker and Peyton.
Right. What was the distance between PC Peyton and Mr. Bio? Could you tell from where you were standing?
Sorry. Maybe about 10 or 12 feet, something like that.
And what about PC Walker? Was he further away from Mr. Bio or closer?
I would say that both PC Peyton and PC Walker, to my memory, looked like they were standing kind of like in a line, but like apart, if that makes sense. And
Yes.
then Mr. Bio was on front of them, so they were both facing him, if that makes sense.
So you-
sorry, I
you
forgot what
meant-
you asked me.
No, that's
Sorry.
absolutely perfect. So Mr. Bio was you mentioned a triangle earlier. Was
Yeah.
Mr. Bio the top of the triangle? And PC Walker and PC Peyton were the bottom
Yeah.
points of the triangle?
Yeah.
Right, thank you. Where was PC Tomlinson?
I mean, I can only. Well, at this time,
You can show us with the red circle.
I'll be honest, I can't remember seeing him at this kind of snapshot.
Okay.
I was just aware that he would have been getting out of the van.
That's fine. Now at that point, did you consider simply waiting in the van and observing what was happening?
No.
Why not?
PC's Walker and Peyton, like I've mentioned, were two of the most experienced officers on our team, and my initial assessment when I arrived was that on watching them and their reaction, I knew and trusted from that that there was an urgency. I knew they wouldn't react like that if they didn't have to.
Okay.
So I immediately got out of the van to assist, really.
At that time, did you consider updating the control room or Sergeant Maxwell on the airwaves transmission about what you could see?
No.
Why not?
To be honest, I was at that point where I was fearful, I was scared, and this all happened so quickly that initially when I got out the van and the other sprays drawn, I didn't have enough information, but first and foremost, it all unfolded so quickly that I felt like my priority was to deal at that moment with what was unfolding in front of me.
And I want to ask you about what everyone was doing then. So you said sprays drawn there. So can you tell us, what could you see PC Walker doing at that moment when you got out the van?
Well, from memory, I just remember approaching, seeing them both out the van. Initially they had their hands on their spray, which is depending if you're right or left-handed, it would be on whichever side, but they had it on, sorry, could you repeat the question
Of
again?
course,
Sorry.
yes. Let's start with PC Walker. So you're at the paved front passenger side of the fish van.
Yeah.
You're looking over.
Yeah.
What could you see PC Walker doing?
I could see him shouting at Mr. Bio. He had his hand out, his hand on his spray, and from memory it's a mixture of commands like stay back, stay where you are, a warning of their spray. So I remember.
Now you're making some gestures there as you
Yeah.
sit there.
Yeah.
And could you just stand up where you are?
Yeah.
And show us what you were doing so that the chair and the assessors can actually see. You said he had his hand out and his hand on his spray.
So if he was right-handed, his spray would be there, and he kind of adopted a kind of side-on stance with your hand out,
Right.
indicating for them to stay where they are. Yeah.
What I'm going to do then, because you're talking about your legs as well, I'm going to ask you to come out. There's a little plastic sticky tape, but I'm not sure the audio is as good. So I'll just ask you to come out, show the stance that you saw PC Walker in, don't say anything, and then I'll get you back to your seat. Are you happy to do that?
Yeah.
Thank you. Thanks, come round. You get the sticky bit. So could you stand behind it? The camera will be over there, and just show the chair what PC Walker was doing. Just show us. I was advised that So I was advised that when the demonstrations were being done, and I can see now that they are clicking on. It's just taken a moment. So that's good. It's on the cameras now. So I'll ask you to do that again, please, Miss Short, just so that everyone can see it. Thank you. Thank you. And then I'll get you to go back to your chair. Thanks. I'll ask you to do it more I'll make sure that it's on the screens in the future
Okay,
before I ask
that's
you
okay.
to demonstrate.
right.
That was my fault.
No, no.
So, were you able to see that from where you were standing?
Yeah. Yeah, they were both doing that.
And when you say both,
Oh, sorry.
I was going to ask
both,
you what PC Peyton was doing.
The same. They were both given the same stance and similar commands.
So from your position at the fish van,
Yeah.
you've said they were sort of the bottom ends of the triangle.
Yeah.
Could you see one further forward than the other, or were they in line with each other?
I think, from memory, they were in line with each other. Yeah.
But you could see what PC Walker was doing behind PC Peyton.
Yeah, I mean, through training and things like that, you come to recognise the stances and what are they called again? Like this. If you're wanting somebody to stay away from you and to stay where they are, you would always use that stance that I've just demonstrated.
We may have heard that was described as a defensive stance.
Yeah.
Is that the word
Yeah.
you took?
Yeah.
Right. And then can you tell us what Mr. Bio was doing?
He was standing in front of them. Do you want me to elaborate?
Yes, I
further?
do. Yes, please.
He was standing in front of them, and when he was given these commands, there was just nothing. There was just no verbal response whatsoever. And then he started to walk towards them.
And you said there was nothing, no verbal response. What do you mean by saying there was nothing?
Well, basically, when you turn up to a call, with this scenario, a van with blue lights stops in front of you, two guys get out and are shouting at you to stay back and things like that. Normally what I would expect is like some form of response of whether it be abuse or what, or something, but there was just nothing.
No reaction?
No reaction, yeah.
Is it possible that you could be mistaken in your recollection about what you saw when you got out the fish van?
In terms of
where people were standing, what they were doing?
Perhaps, I mean, if I could refer back to my... Do you mean in terms of like where they were standing and things like that?
Yeah.
Right, no, I mean, obviously with the passage of time and things like that, but that's my current memory of it.
How clear is your recollection of that?
Of just that part, or the whole thing?
That part.
I would say clear.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. I'm going to ask you to look at paragraph 5 of your inquiry statement. And you see, when I did arrive and looked at the scene from the vehicle I was in, I saw PCs, Walker and Peyton, who were out of their van and had their CS spray out already. When I saw that and heard them shouting at Sheku Bio to stay back, telling him that they had their spray and would use it, I realised that this was two of the most experienced members of our team, and they had assessed that Sheku Bio was genuine and serious threat. Can I just be clear, what you've described for us?
Yeah.
Was that from your view from the van, from inside the van, or your view from the pavement?
It was, bearing in mind it was all very quickly, but I've arrived and both, I would say. I would say, I mean, I looked up, quick snapshot, door, opened the door and out, and then, yeah, what I've described to you has been for when I've got out the van, yeah, to answer your question.
So what we have on the image that we looked at, that's your view from standing outside the van.
Yeah.
Thank you. And then in paragraph 6, you'll see you didn't see a knife at that time. But you think it made the situation more serious, as it could have been produced at any time from a place of concealment on his person. What was Mr. Bile wearing when you saw him?
I think it was a light-coloured T-shirt, and I want to say kind of a charcoal colour type jeans.
And in your experience as a police officer, where can people conceal knives?
In the side of the waistband, front, and the back of his waistband, his sock even.
So hidden by the jeans or the T-shirt?
Yeah.
And then can we look at paragraph 10, please, of your inquiry statement? And you've told us here, you were asked what I did when I arrived at the scene, and you say you'd refer to the statements that you've already given, but put shortly, I arrived and saw PCs Walker and Payton, who were confronting Mr. Bile at the path at the bus stop with their spray in their hands and shouting verbal instructions to him. And they said, stay where you are, CS spray, Pava spray, stay where you are. They were both shouting at the same time. Mr. Bile was standing with his arms by his sides, fists clenched, and then he moved towards them. That's when they both sprayed him. Mr. Bile then walked away to his right, up a path, laughing and wiping spray away from his eyes like it was water, like it had no effect on him at all. Bile was cold, almost blank, unresponsive, in a world of his own, disconnected, pumped up. He was on a mission whilst walking up the path. It's worth saying that the knife that was recovered, it was found on the grassy area to the side of the path in the direction of which he was walking. He then turned violent, shouting at me. When I drew my baton, he shouted, fucking come on then, before boxing, skipping towards me. That's when the real terror came across me. Now, there's a lot of information in paragraph 10.
Yeah.
And if it's okay, I'd like to go through some of that with you
Yeah.
in a bit more detail.
Yeah.
And are you okay to do that now?
Could I have a wee break first? Is that okay? Okay, thank you.
Miss Graham.
Thank you. Miss Short, I was just about to move on to paragraph 10 while Miss Wildgoose gets that up on the screen for us. Can I ask you, you mentioned 2 previous knife incidents that you'd attended earlier this morning. Did either of those involve any black men?
No.
Thank you. Looking at paragraph 10, you'll see it's on the screen, but you'll have a copy of it in front of you if you wish to look at that. And the first thing I'd like to ask you about, you've introduced the beginning of it really in your evidence before the break. You've said they were both shouting at the same time.
Yeah.
And does that mean they were shouting in unison, or were they shouting different things at the same time?
Different things at the same time, but they would fall under the same command.
And you've said they were saying, stay where you are, CS spray, PAVA spray, stay where you are.
Yeah.
And that was your recollection when you gave your inquiry statement?
Yeah.
And you've described Mr. Bio, you say he was standing with his arms by his sides, fists clenched, and then he moved towards them. When you say standing, when you describe him, can you show us how he was standing? And I wonder if you could, again, maybe come and give us a demonstration?
Yeah.
Thank you. But I'm not going to rush you into it this time. I'm going to wait till it's on the screen.
No, it's fine.
So if you want to come out and stand beside the sticky tape on the floor, it's very quickly moved to the screen so everyone can see. No one should need to stand up. And can you show how he was standing? Thank you. And if you come back, we'll get you in front of the microphone again. And you say that he moved towards them. When he moved towards them, what did PC Walker and PC Payton do?
Sorry. They shouted at him more to stay where you are, and then they sprayed him because he wasn't listening.
When you saw them spray him, what happened?
My next memory is that he was like, Mr. Bio was wiping it away from his eyes, like just like it was water. In my training, I've had CS. When I was a special constable, I had it like sprayed at me, and it completely, incapacitated me. And to see somebody just stand there completely unaffected by it and wipe it out, like I say, it was like it was just water. Yeah.
So both PC Payton and PC Walker sprayed him, and the spray connected?
Yeah.
With Mr. Bio?
Yeah.
On his face?
It was, well, yeah, it must have, because he was white. I just remember seeing it on his face, and he was just like wiping it away.
How did he wipe it away? Can you show us?
Yeah, it was just like, when I say in my statement he was laughing, it was more like, is that it? Like wiping it away, and then he proceeded to begin to walk up the path that's on the map.
Did he use both hands, or what? If not, what hand did he use?
I can't be sure. I wouldn't like to say with any certainty. I can just see him wiping it away for his eyes.
Okay. Now, you then talk in the statement about walking away to his right up a path, and I wonder if we could go back to the image that we looked at before.
Yeah.
So image 5, and you previously described where the 3 of them were, and can you point out the path, please?
Yeah. It's just
And
extending.
what direction did Mr. Bio walk in? Now, if you give us a second, you'll get a line.
Okay.
You can use it now to show us the direction he came from. Right.
Sorry, me and
No,
technology.
don't worry. So the red circle's just moved along that path that we see. And that was the direction that Mr. Bio walked in after he'd been sprayed.
Yeah.
And I see the circle there. Is that where is that how far he got along the path, or did he get further along?
I think he got further on from memory.
Right. Could you show us how far he got along that path?
I want to say, like, kind of in amongst the trees. Kind of, maybe a wee bit. I've done it again, so I'm sorry.
No, don't worry. Do you want us to take those away and start again?
Just number 3 away, but
Just take number 3 away. Now, tell us what the circle number 2 shows.
that's the point that he kind of like stopped in his tracks and turned round.
So if we're looking at that path, that's as far along the path as he reached, is it? In that area?
Yeah.
We'll have some more images later and we can fine-tune this.
Yeah, no worries.
Thank you. So at this moment, you've described in paragraph 10 him walking along the path, but you've given a description of Mr. Bio. I'd like to know, is this description of Mr. Bio at the point he was on Hayfield Road, or is it at the point he was walking along the path? And we can look at that for the moment.
Yeah.
You say Bio was cold, almost blank, unresponsive. Do you see that? So it's paragraph 10 of your statement.
Is it
Enquiry statement.
right? Alright, so
We can look at that again just to remind you. And you'll see halfway down that paragraph, Mr. Bio then walked away to his right up a path laughing and wiping spray away from his eyes like it was water, like it had no effect on him at all. Are you with me?
Yeah.
Bio was cold, almost blank, unresponsive, in a world of his own, disconnected, pumped up. I'd like to go through all of those words with you and just make sure that the chair understands what you meant. So you've said he was cold. And what did you mean by that?
Just the lack of response, even like facial expression. There was, apart from, I mean, I know I've said he kind of did the like laugh type thing as I've described it as, but there was just nothing. It was like probably going to in a world of his own type of thing, but it was like he was in his own wee world and we weren't there. He wasn't hearing it. It was like he wasn't hearing us.
Where were you when you could see his face?
I could see his face for when I came out the passenger side, but obviously when he started to walk up that path, I could see him closer.
How close was he?
At one point, I want to say maybe a metre and a half away from me.
Okay. And you also use the expression pumped up.
Yeah.
What do you mean by that?
Well, when he was walking away, it was like he was on a mission, and that's another thing that confused me, because I was just thinking, where are you going? You know, wait the now. And his muscles were massive. They were what's the word? They were like bulging out his top, and he just, along with, you know, his body language, the rate in which he was walking away, it just, like I say, it was like he was on a mission.
Right. And you're describing his muscles.
Yeah.
Which particular muscles are you talking about?
Probably like here and here, and shoulders, just this
His
type
arms and
of-
his shoulders.
Yeah.
And you've said his body language. What was it in particular about his body language?
When he was walking away, you mean? Yeah, it was, like I say, it's hard to describe any other way apart from on a mission. Like, nothing else that was happening around him mattered or was sinking in or anything like that.
And you talked about the rate he was walking away. What did you mean by the rate?
It wasn't quite a power walk, but it wasn't a leisurely stroll. It was probably more closer to, if that was a scale, it would be further towards the power walk. It was like, right, I'm walking here. Does that make sense? Right.
So as Mr. Biles walking along the path, what could you see of PC Peyton?
I just remember him like walking away up the path, and then I suppose for where I was standing, it was kind of like he walked past me, and then I remember looking at him and saying, like,
Is this PC
sorry.
Peyton?
Oh no, sorry, Mr. Bio was walking past me, and then I tried to engage with him, and then I turned around, and I just remember both PC's Peyton and Walker with their hands up to their face.
Where were they?
Roughly this, I would say from memory, the same place as where I originally saw them when they sprayed them.
That was at the passenger side of the
van.
transit van.
Yeah.
And describe how they were positioned.
Well, they were alongside the van, and it was like they were kind of bent like over like that, but with their hands like that. That's all I remember.
And you're putting your hands in your
Put
your
my
head in your
my-
hands.
Yeah,
Were they both like that?
yeah. From my memory, anyway. Yeah.
So Shekubayo didn't. You described earlier him moving towards them, but he didn't actually go over to them. He walked up the path.
Yeah.
And where were you at the point he starts walking up the path? I wonder if we could go back to image 5, please. So you've told us about Mr. Bio walking up the path. Could you tell us where you were?
Yeah. At the point he was walking up the
At the point
path.
he walks up the path. Have you moved from where you described earlier?
It happened so quickly, so initially I probably was just still standing watching this because, like, to let you understand, it came down to like a matter of seconds. Sorry.
No, I think what we'll do is we'll maybe get the arrow rather than the red circle,
Alright.
which makes it harder for you to show the direction. So you should be able to touch the screen now and keep your finger on it, and you'll be able to draw a line.
Right.
So you can maybe show us where you moved to.
Right. So me.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. So I would say I started off at the passenger side, and then I kind of mirrored him, and I just kind of
Right.
walked alongside him to a point. Like I say, I was trying to engage with him, but nothing was kind of registering or sinking in.
And
Yeah.
you've said you mirrored him. What do you mean by that?
I just mean like I tried to keep a distance, but I kind of walked with him, if that makes sense.
So using another arrow, do you want to show us where Mr. Bio was at the point you were walking along there?
Yeah, just parallel, kind of with me.
Right. So you're number 1 and Mr. Bio's number 2.
Yeah,
And Mr. Bio's on the path.
yeah,
And you're you're near to him, walking alongside him.
Yeah.
And tell us what happened then.
So he was walking, he kept walking, and I was saying like something along the lines of like, where are you going? Stay where you are. Just repeating that type of thing, and nothing was sinking in. So I remember PC Tomlinson being to my left. So
could you maybe point that
Yeah.
out on the image?
so
We'll get a red circle this time, I think. Yeah, carry on.
it's hard because like roughly kind of there, and
Right.
it could have been closer, I don't know, but it was like roughly he was in my line of sight, I would say.
So you're travelling number 1 in the direction of that arrow,
Yeah.
and PC Tomlinson's on your left,
Yeah.
where number 3 is.
Yeah.
So you're speaking to Mr. Bio. Were you speaking or were you shouting?
I wasn't shouting. I was just like how I've described to you, maybe a wee
Okay.
bit more forceful, but because I just seen what was happening. But yeah,
Okay. And how did he react?
nothing. It was like I wasn't there.
Right.
He just kept walking. I mean,
And what did you do when you realised you weren't getting a reaction from him?
I stopped mirroring, like walking alongside him, and at some point I remember hearing, and I'm positive it was PC Walker say, "Somebody give me their baton," and I took my baton out, and out of nowhere I kind of feel as though I recited what we were taught at police college to him. Yeah,
Where was PC Walker?
he was behind me, but to the left of me.
Do you want to point on the
Yeah.
image?
See, it's hard. Just try to think.
Take your time.
Yeah. Maybe kind of roughly there. I know it's
I
coming up on
don't
top
see
of the
that
van.
circle on this. Oh, there it is, right.
I was trying to put it back a wee bit, but it was there or thereabouts, but he was behind me. But I don't know if I can put it on the van. If that makes sense.
Don't worry, because as I say, we'll
Yeah.
have other images prepared later and we can fine tune this.
Yeah, okay.
And you heard him asking for a baton.
Yeah,
And what did you do when you heard that?
I took my baton out and I extended it.
Where do
Yeah.
you normally keep your baton? Which side?
My left-hand side, because I'm right-handed, so you would kind of go in there and take it out, and then it extends by kind of going like that, and then it'll extend.
Yeah. Did that get any attention? Did that attract any attention from Mr. Bio?
When I initially took my baton out, no, but when I started giving the command, and telling him, I mean, he had his back to me by this point because he'd walked in front of me. I don't know. So I what am I trying to say? Sorry. So when I initially did that, I put it on my shoulder. It wasn't until I'd finished speaking to him that I got a reaction.
What did you say immediately prior to getting a reaction?
Could I refer to my statement for exact
Yes,
wording?
please do. Please do.
I could give you the gist of it, but it's probably more accurate in here.
Yeah.
Trying to think.
Maybe you could tell us which statement it is that you want to look at, and we could get that on the screen.
think it's maybe it's 254 Perk 0025.
Is it the one on the 4th of June?
Yeah, I think so.
All right. Do you want to look at page 6, perhaps? And you'll see at paragraph 5, it says, Craig Walker shouted, somebody give me a baton.
Yeah.
And then the last line is, I drew my baton in my right hand and presented my open left hand to him.
Yeah.
Rested the baton on my right shoulder. And I told him to stop where you are, go down to your knees. Put your hands behind your back or I will strike.
Yeah.
And is that what you remember? And go down to your knees. Is that what you remember saying?
Yeah.
Immediately
Yeah.
after you'd pulled out your baton?
Mm-hmm.
And what was Mr. Byles' reaction to that?
Well, he had his back to me and he just stopped walking, and then he turned his head over his left shoulder and went, what? Like that, and then he turned round to face me, and he looked at PC Tomlinson, so it's like PC Tomlinson, PC Walker, then me, and then he went, fucking come on then. But it wasn't quite like that. I wasn't going to swear there, but it was much more confrontational,
Well, first of all,
aggressive than that.
don't worry about swearing, because we
Okay.
would like to hear what you remember. So was that the furthest point along the path that he reached?
Yeah.
And then he turned?
Yeah,
And he looked at the other officers and he looked at you?
yeah,
And that was in a confrontational way?
yeah.
And then, what did you do?
Well, when he turned round and went, oh, fucking come on then, like that, immediately, and he immediately started walking. Well, I say walking, it was a mixture of that and kind of like a boxer skip, like how you would see a boxer, a boxer's footwork, if you like, within a ring. It was kind of like that. So it was a mixture of that. So I immediately was shouting at this point, get back, get back, get back. I don't think I was retreating myself, because he was closing the gap really quickly. So then I was kind of not skipping back. How could you describe it? Shuffling my feet back, I suppose. But quickly, to try and attempt to keep that distance, because all the time we don't know where this knife is, and that's what was in the back of my mind, like the reason we were called there.
Had you at any point up till then seen him with a knife?
No,
Had you seen a knife at all
No.
at that point?
no.
And when you describe him coming towards you, can you tell us how far was he from you when he turned and started doing the boxing skipping?
For memory, maybe between 10 and 12 feet, something like that. I think.
And you immediately start shuffling backwards?
Yeah.
Where was PC Tomlinson?
He was still on my left.
Where was PC Walker?
I can't honestly remember, sorry.
Let's go back to the image for a moment. You've described this shuffling backwards. How far backwards did you shuffle? Can you point to the area where you stopped shuffling backwards?
Well, I was on. Eventually, he kept coming. He kept he kept coming towards me by doing that, and he wasn't getting back, so I kind of, is that a circle or an arrow? Circle. For what I remember, I had to go through it was like shrubs, the kind of grass area, and then I ended up, I ended up on the road, roughly there, for memory, because what happened was the gap was getting smaller and smaller, and to the point where I would say it was maybe within maybe just over a metre from me, and I'm still going back, I'm still shouting, stay back, get back, and I've got my hand, it was like that, like my baton there, and then my hand out, and then he got within quite close to me, and then to create distance, I swiped my baton like that, and then like that, and then he still didn't stop, and then at that point, I would say like just instinct kicked in, and I was running away from him before I knew it.
So let me just go through that more slowly. Thank you. So you've drawn an arrow at number 1 in the direction that you were going when you mirrored Mr. Bile.
Yeah.
And then you've identified at circle 5 where you were shuffling back to.
Yeah.
So did you move along the direction of the number 1, but then from that point then shuffle backwards to number 5?
What I would, is it still a circle? Yeah. What I would say is that, right, so I would say that Mr. Bile maybe got to roughly there, and then when I shouted at him, the gap had, he'd walked ahead of me, like I said, and then I was there, and then when he kind of turned round and went, fucking come on then, he so then he came back from 6 to 7, and then I made it, I shuffled back essentially for 7 to 5, and that's the point where I had to turn and run.
Thank you, that's very helpful. And you said that by the point you've stopped shuffling back, he was quite close. That's the words you used. Can you give us an indication of how close quite close was?
Yeah, well, like I say, I'd kind of swipe my baton without hitting him, because I just wanted him to stop. I didn't actually want to hurt him or anything like that. I just wanted to find out what was going on, type thing. And then he didn't. That had no bearing on anything, and I would say got to about there, because I just remember seeing his face really close to me.
What's the distance between your hand and
about it was like right in my personal space, if you would. So it's, I would say maybe an arm's length there, that sort of thing.
Your arm's length. How many times did you swipe your baton?
What I did was I went once, twice, and then that was it. And then it came within my personal space, as I say, and that's when I turned and ran.
But your baton didn't connect at any point?
No.
So from position 5, you said you turned and ran.
Yeah.
Using an arrow, can you show us which direction you ran in?
Yeah. If it makes it any better, I know that there's like 2 houses that face the wee white painted roundabout, kind of facing into the pub.
Why don't we look at image 6 maybe and see if that would give you a better perspective?
Yeah.
Does that help?
Yeah, because I just remember when I turned and ran, I just remember the houses seemed to be going so far away from me.
Right.
It was like, and then on going back to the locus, they're just there type thing. But I was I remember the houses, so I'd probably be facing them, if that makes sense.
Right.
So
from your position, the previous position we saw, in the other image, you've run across Hayfield Road, you're behind the fish van, you've run across Hayfield Road to the south side, I think some people have called it.
right, I wouldn't know, but yeah, towards the houses.
That's fine. And that was towards the houses at the end of Hayfield Road, really?
Yeah.
Okay. Give me a moment. I wonder if we could look at image 4 as well, please, just for completeness. Now this is another image taken from houses on Hayfield Road.
Okay.
And you'll see the fish van there.
Yeah.
It wouldn't have been this house, I don't think, from your description. It'd be further towards the roundabout.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. How were you feeling at the time?
At the time I turned round and I would say before that I was completely overcome with fear. I remember my whole body shaking when he was shuffling towards me and boxer skipping, and I should add as well, he had his fists up like a boxer would as well.
Can you show us?
It was like that. And then like when he kept not listening to me and he kept like coming towards me, and I was giving him clear commands to stay away from me, and to I would then say that point where he came within a kind of arm's width of me, I can only describe it as maybe like completely overwhelmed with terror. It's probably the best way I could describe it.
Can we move to image 6 again, please? Now, that's image 5, and we've also got image 6, and you tell me what's the best image for you explaining this, but you've described running across Hayfield Road.
Yeah.
And I want to tell you, I want you to tell us, please, what happened as you were running across Hayfield Road.
I was screaming when I was running away, and I was screaming no. What I remember is being like over and over again, and I felt his presence behind me. Like I just knew he was right behind me, and I was running, and then I just remember feeling. I've always described it as this almighty blow to the back of my head, just at my ear, and then I tried to stay on my feet, but I just couldn't. I couldn't stay on my feet, and I was desperate to stay on my feet because, like, the ground is the most dangerous place you can be, in a way. But I just remember putting my hands out to save, like, put my hands out like that to like save myself, as you would, when you fall.
So you felt one blow to and you've pointed to behind your right ear.
Yeah.
Can you show us, and please either use image 5 or image 6, whatever you prefer.
Yeah.
I'd like you to show us where you fell onto the ground.
I just remember seeing the curb. I'm not saying I was like right at it, but I remember seeing it. So are you asking where
you
kind
fell?
recall?
Yeah. Where you fell, please.
Maybe. Maybe
Thank
there,
you.
roughly.
So you're on the other side of Hayfield Road. I wonder if image 8 might be useful. Do you see that this is actually an image, a sort of aerial view?
Yeah.
Not down Hayfield Road, but you'll understand that on the left-hand side is the roundabout with Henry Road.
Yeah.
And we can see the sort of island in the road there. And the vehicles aren't there at the moment, so I don't know, this may not assist you or it may. But we can see the road there, Hayfield Road. Again, can you point out the area where you fell on this image, if you're able?
Yeah. I think it was roughly kind of. Oh, sorry.
You can move. We'll take those away and we'll do it again.
Sorry.
Not at all.
Roughly there.
Right. So that's beyond the row of cars we see on the other side of Hayfield Road.
Mm-hmm.
There's a sort of grey, silvery car at the front of that row. And it's opposite the end of the houses at Hayfield Road.
Yeah.
But not quite as far as the island that we can see there.
Yeah.
Are you comfortable with that position?
Yeah, there or thereabouts, like give or take. I can't describe actually how, like that moment felt like you were running in slow motion type thing. So give or take that roughly.
And you've described your hands, you putting your hands out in front of you.
Yeah.
So your head was towards the pavement there.
Yeah.
And where were your feet?
Behind me, so facing the pathway that we'd just come from.
Yeah. And you've described Mr. Bio behind you.
Yeah.
Now, in landing on the ground, describe to us the position you were in.
I was on my front. Yeah.
Did you remain flat on your front?
The next, it kind of jumps because I remember being hit, and then like knocked flying for want of a better phrase, and then hitting the ground, and then the next thing I remember is curling up into a ball and grabbing like the bun at the back of my head and trying to protect my head, and I was on my right hand side on the ground.
How were you wearing your hair that day?
I had it in a low bun.
So you've curled up into a ball.
Yeah.
And you said your right hand side.
Yeah.
Where was Mr. Bio?
I can't say with certainty that I saw him, but it was one of those instincts I could feel. I can't describe it any better than that. That I could just feel his presence was still there.
Did you get a sense of where he was in relation to your body?
Yeah, at my back. So if I'm lying on my side like that, he would have been there. That's how I felt anyway.
He was at your back?
Yeah.
And what did you do then?
I lay there shouting, like, it's just a kind of, like at the same time as shouting, like, no, I'm lying there bracing myself for further blows similar to the punch I got. And then I was there, and I just remembered it was like, I just remember seeing a kind of shadow. I couldn't tell you who it was or anything like that. And then there's this overwhelming kind of feeling of get up, but get up right now type thing. So I went onto my knees, and then I tried to stand up, but my legs weren't working, so I fell to my knees in the middle of the road, and then I tried again, and then again, but it kept happening, and I had absolutely no idea what was going on. I just remember like trying, and I was crying, and I looked up and I saw PC Allen Payton, and his eyes were just like bulging out, just bulging, and obviously for the spray I took that at that time that he was trying to keep his eyes open, and he came over to me and I was on my knees, and he picked me up from my stab vest like on the shoulder bit, and he like put me on my feet, and he went like that, and he went, run to the van, like that, and then he left, and then I remember just like holding my side, and just I wouldn't even say walking, it was like just kind of staggering, and I got back to the wee fish van that me and Ash were in, PC Tomlinson was in, and then, would you want me to stop?
Okay, no, that's fine. Let's go back to image 6.
Okay.
Or actually, let's go back to image 5. So you mentioned you were holding your side and you gestured to your right hand side.
Yeah.
And then you were heading back to the van.
Yeah.
So that's the fish van there on that image 5. Is that the van you were heading
Yeah.
for? And tell us what you did when you got there.
I got to that van and I turned round, and I just remember seeing Mr. Bio lifting all 3 male police officers off the ground, and I remember just being like, just thinking he's going to get up and finish me off, and I so I continued staggering to the bigger van, because I thought I need to get as far away from this as I can.
Right, you've given us a lot of
Yeah.
information, so I'm going to go back over some of that with you, if
Yeah.
you don't mind. Right. You've described... Can we just go back, actually, to when you were up close to... So he was quite close to you, within an arm's length.
Mm-hmm.
And when you saw Mr. Bio that close,
Mm-hmm.
what was your view about whether he was under the influence of anything?
I thought, given that it was kind of everything put together, but especially the fact that, and by that what I mean is like his body language, the lack of response or engagement with us to any kind of instruction that we were giving him, and but most of all it was the fact that the spray, neither the PAVA spray or the CS seemed to work. And what was your question again? Sorry.
No, I'm asking you about whether he was under the influence.
Oh yeah. So that spurred me to think that that he was under the influence of something.
We may have heard evidence that certain conditions can be caused if you're under the influence of drink or drugs, and there's a condition that we've heard reference to called excited delirium or acute behavioural disorder. Is that something you were aware of?
Yes.
Yeah. And you've said in paragraph 15 of your statement that he was out of control beyond reasoning with and determined to fight himself out of the situations he was in.
Mm-hmm.
When you said he was out of control and beyond reasoning with, what did you mean?
Out of control, I would say that he just wasn't engaging to any of us, and by the time he came within an arm's width, they had 4 police officers instructing him to stop and to stay where he was, and he just wasn't. And what added to that was the fact that the spray didn't work. So that was, you know, it's used to incapacitate people essentially, and then that's probably the best. I say the best tool that we have to hand, but that's because it can keep them at a distance and completely stop them in their tracks. So that's what made me think he was out of control. And what was the other one again?
Oh, that's fine. So actually, when you saw him being sprayed by Walker and Payton and it having no effect, was that the moment that you realised he may be under the influence of something?
Yeah.
Right. And so before you've mirrored him going up the path, you had that information?
Yeah.
Had you thought about feeding that back to control room or to Sergeant Maxwell?
I'll be honest. Like I say, it was such a fast moving situation that we were in, and like I say, all the while we're called there because, and not just by one witness, by several, that there's reports of a man with a knife. So, sorry.
No, that's fine.
What was your question again? Sorry.
I can't
I'm
remember
getting
myself.
tired. Right, okay.
All right.
That's all right.
Are you okay to carry on?
Yeah, I've just lost my train of thought. I just
All right.
needed to know what you asked me to get hopefully back on it again.
Well, let me just check because we've got a transcript
Okay.
and I'll double check. Can I see your transcript, please? Right. I'm sure it was my fault. It'd be a
No.
poorly phrased
Oh no,
question.
sorry.
I'd asked you if you'd thought about maybe feeding back that information.
Oh, yeah.
We were talking about the spray not having any
Yeah.
effect, and you being aware of that being a red flag,
Yeah.
that he was under the influence of drink or drugs. And I said, had you thought about feeding that back to the control room or to Sergeant Maxwell?
Yeah. No, because there just wasn't enough time. This was unfolding very quickly, and as it did, so the risk to the public, ourselves, just seemed to increase.
So you've talked about the risks.
Yeah.
So how did the information that he may be under the influence of drink or drugs affect that risk assessment that you were doing?
On the way there, or just
After you realised the spray hadn't had any effect?
Wait, you meaning like what effect did that have on my risk
Did-
assessment?
That new information
Yeah.
that the spray wasn't working,
Yeah.
so that's new information that you've now digested yourself.
Yeah.
Did that have any impact on how you decided to deal with the situation?
It just made me think that even more so that he needed to be stopped, and that he was dangerous, because even at the first kind of verbal commands, they weren't working. So yeah, in my mind, to that, he was more dangerous and out of control, and of course we're called there to bring I forget the word, sorry. Just to essentially make the area safe again for the public.
Okay. At any point, did you think about treating it as a medical emergency?
I would say the priority at that point was to get him under control. I mean, that could have been a possibility, absolutely. I mean, it was, like I say, it was obvious for that time that he was possibly under the influence of something, but with all that in mind, he still needed to be kind of stopped, because like I say, the number of calls the public had made, they were clearly in fear of their safety.
So that was the priority for you.
Yeah.
Did you consider at any point just containing Mr. Bayou in the path area, or calling for an ambulance for him?
There was no way of containing him. As I say, I mirrored him for a period of time, and he just kept walking. And the only thing that seemed to almost snap him out of it, if you like, was me taking my baton out and shouting the command. And as I say, all the time, where is this knife that we've heard from numerous witnesses that they've seen him in possession of? So, yeah.
Thank you. So you've described earlier shuffling back and then running on the road.
Yeah.
And you pointed that out to us, and feeling the mighty blow at the back of your head. How long would you say you were on the ground?
If it was just as simple, you meaning from the memories that I have? Because obviously I later found out that I was knocked unconscious, and I don't know any details about that. That's still kind of trying to fill in the blanks with that. But I would say it's like I had a memory of falling, and then I don't know, maybe 10 seconds or something like that. I don't know. I couldn't say for sure, but.
So you were told by others later that you'd been knocked. Their impression was you'd been knocked unconscious.
Yeah.
That's not something you were conscious of or
No.
aware of.
Aye.
When you were on the ground, could you tell from your position where PC Tomlinson was?
No.
Or PC Walker?
No.
Or PC Payton?
No.
Can I ask you to look at paragraph 17, please? I had to be lifted by PC Alan Payton. The only person I could see when I got back to my feet was PC Payton. Where was PC Payton when you got back to your feet?
Well, I didn't get back to. Right, I'll just. I got onto my knees and I'd tried to stand up without success 2 or 3 times, and then I was on my knees, and I just remember looking up, and I think he was. I just remember he was like on front of me, and then I just remember seeing him, and he came over, and he was completely in shock, like grey in colour in his eyes, and he came over from the bus stop, I would say, that sort of area.
I'd like to go through your position on the ground, because you've described to us how you went from flat, curled up,
Yeah.
and then tried to get up onto your knees.
Yeah.
What I'd like to do is to get another demonstration from you. So I'll bring you out, and again, we can't hear anything, so I don't need you to speak, but I'd like you to demonstrate to the chair and the assessors how you were, first of all, when you landed, and then the position that you moved into.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. So I'll get you to come out. And we can see that the cameras are on, so no one will need to stand up. Right. Show us how you were when you landed, first of all, please. You described earlier putting your hands out. You don't have to simulate it. I just need you to demonstrate how you were when you landed, first of all. Yes, please. Thank you. And then I want you to show how you curled up into the fetal position, please. Take your time. Right. And you're lying on your right hand side. And then can you show us how you managed to get up onto your knees? All right, thank you. Please go back. Thank you very much, Miss Short. So when you landed, you were flat on the ground, and you'd turned your head slightly to the right, I think.
See, I did that there, but honestly, if I'm being honest, I just remember putting my hands out in the ground, and then nothing.
Okay.
And then the next thing I remember is the curling up.
So you curled up, and you were lying on your right hand side.
Yeah.
And you had your hands behind your head.
Yeah.
You told us you had your hair in a bun that day.
Yeah.
Did you have a hat on?
No.
So you're on your right hand side. You told us earlier Mr. Bile was at your back.
Yeah.
And when you turned your body to get up on your knees, am I right in saying you described PC Patent as in front of you?
Yeah. Yeah.
Thanks. So you're on your right side, and you then get up on your knees and you get up. And then was it at that point that you went over to the fish van?
Yeah, once PC Peyton had picked me up and kind of perched me on my feet. Yeah.
And describe the equipment you're wearing round your waist or your hips. Tell us what you had on you.
I would have had my baton holder, my spray in its holder, handcuffs. There was a kind of like a pouch that I had at the back of my belt that I would keep like blue gloves in or first aid sort of stuff in. And I think that was it.
So you've shown us you're lying on your right side, and you're can you tell us what was on the right side of your belt?
I know my spray would have been. I can't honestly remember where my handcuffs would have been. My baton holder was on my left side, and then the black pouch that I described for first aid things was on the back of my belt, so it would be at my back.
Could I ask you to look at a police vest? It's not your police vest,
Right.
but it's a
Yeah.
model, a size that.
Yeah.
And Miss Taylor Smith will show you that. And that's the size, I understand, that you would have worn that day.
Yeah.
Yeah. And we'll see that it's the black body armour bit underneath, and then the high visibility jacket
Yeah.
over it. So
It's,
is it attached, that high
No,
vis?
it can come off.
It can come off.
Yeah.
All right. And so, seeing that now on the right, where can you describe to the chair where your belt would be kept? Is it over that, or is it under it, or?
Under it, so it would kind of be here, like on your hips. So that would kind of come down to wherever, and then your belt would be on your hips, so it'd be underneath that. Well, I mean, I don't mean underneath, I mean here, below.
Would you be able to slip that on and show us where the belt would be?
Yeah.
Don't worry about touching that or anything, that's just a model.
Okay.
It's just
fell off, sorry.
I realise on the day you wouldn't be wearing a blouse
Yeah, yeah.
or a shirt. So what were you wearing that day?
I was wearing my, it's like a kind of, as a zip up top kind of made of like cycling material, you could say. And then I had a micro fleece, it was called. It's just like a thin fleece with fleece on the arm.
Right.
It doesn't zip up now because I'm burning a bit away, I'm afraid.
No, that's fine. So can you just point to the area on your body that your belt with your equipment would have been
So it
worn?
would be here.
Right. So it's underneath that sort of hard part of the vest. And the black part of the vest that is longer, would that go over the belt or would
No.
it? No.
No, you would probably put the belt over it, but no, it would be above it. The vest would be above the belt.
The vest would be above the belt.
Yeah,
So you wouldn't be pulling the vest over, the belt would be exposed.
yeah,
And on the right hand side of the belt, you said you had your spray. Here,
Yeah.
I'll take that for the
all
moment.
right, thank you.
So you had your spray. Anything else on the right hand side of the belt?
I can't remember where my handcuffs were. They might have been on. They may have been on my right because I'm right-handed, so that would, I suppose, make sense.
So the spray and maybe the handcuffs.
Yeah.
Anything else on that side?
No, not that I can recall anyway.
And then you mentioned something about first aid.
Yeah.
Tell me what that was.
It's like a it was like a black pouch that would slide onto your belt and be held there, and within that you could keep any kind of equipment that you might need. Like I say, I've used the example of blue gloves for use during searching people or going to injured people or.
Anything else? You mentioned first aid. Was it any
I
other
can't
first
honestly
aid
remember.
equipment?
There was. I couldn't tell you honestly what it was.
How big was that pouch?
Um,
Do you remember?
there was one that was a bit bigger I had, maybe about that. And like I say, the back of it slotted onto your belt. And I think I think we had a smaller one too, that was maybe about that. And once again it slipped onto your belt.
On that day, on the 3rd of May, did you have the bigger one or the smaller one?
I think I had both on the back.
Both
I think,
on the back?
Yeah. I'd need to see it again, but
And were they both full of equipment or items, first aid items that you wanted?
yeah, they weren't full to the brim or anything, but they contained them, yeah.
Did they unzip or
It
did they
was
have a popper?
It was a Velcro, so you just like kind of ripped open the top of it.
And on the left of your belt, you had your baton.
Yeah.
Anything else?
Not that I can remember. Yeah.
We were going to move on to, you said you saw Mr. Bile lifting officers. So I'm going to move on to that. Would you like a short break now, or are you happy to carry on?
Can I have a wee break after that, please? Okay.
Short break at this stage. Ms. Graham.
Thank you. You've told us about how you were on the ground and you've given us an estimate of the time. Can you recollect how long you were flat out on the ground?
No, sorry.
Do you remember how long you were curled up on the ground?
I want to say about 7 seconds or something like that.
In terms of proportion or percentage, how long were you flat out compared to being curled up?
My memory of being like falling to the ground with my hands ahead of me is like, it's kind of like a second, and then I just go straight to curling up in a ball.
Thank you. Can I ask you to look at a couple of things?
Yeah.
One should be a CS spray and one should be a baton. I just really want to ask you if you recognise that they were like the ones you had that day. They're models.
Yeah.
You can touch them.
Okay.
So could you hold up the CS spray first of all?
Yeah.
And when you talk about the holster,
I think.
does that look like the CS
sorry,
spray?
I've just broken
Don't worry, I've done that.
This basically, this black part is the holster, and then you can kind of see the white tin part of the CS canister.
So you can remove that from your
Yeah.
belt.
Yeah.
Can you remove it from the holster? Or is it contained
Oh,
within the holster?
No, you can remove it from the holster, yeah.
And then there's a
Yeah.
so
This connects onto your belt, so that if you know you're not using it, you can essentially just drop it, and then it will still be attached to you. It wouldn't then be free for somebody to pick up
and use on
use it.
on you.
Yeah,
And that's a sort of hard plastic holster.
yeah.
Thank you. And then looking at the baton, do you recognise the baton?
Yeah. Yeah.
And would you be comfortable demonstrating how you extend it? Is that something you can do?
Yeah.
If you don't feel comfortable with it, we can ask someone else to do it.
Right.
Try and avoid Miss
try
Pang at the
and
side.
not,
Maybe
I'm
if you
sorry.
came out into the middle, that might be better. Thank you. You'll be out of practice. But there's a technique where you can move it sharply to the side and it will extend automatically. Thank you. Thank you very much. And just you can come back and we'll take those away. And just before I leave this, could we look at paragraph 30, please? Of your inquiry statement. Now, this relates to a later period when you've gone back to the canteen, and I will come back onto this in a while. But it says, at some point I had asked PC Ash Tomlinson what happened back there, and he told me, Nicole, he was stamping on you. He told me that he thought I was dead after being hit by Mr. Bio, and then he went on to describe the sound. And is that the first time in the canteen that you were told Mr. Bio had stamped on you?
Yeah. It's the first time I found out I was unconscious as well.
Thank you. Right, I'd like to move on, as I said I would, and I'm going to ask you about, you're at the van. You talked about going to the fish van, and then you talked about going to the transit van to be further away. Mm-hmm. And is that the big white van was the transit van we saw in the previous images?
Yeah.
And explain to us where you were in that van, the transit van.
So I'd managed to get to the passenger side, but I was on front of the van, but at the passenger side.
Let's have a look at the
yeah.
images. That might make it
Yeah.
easier to describe. Maybe we could look at image 5, please. Perfect. So we've got the transit van there, and we've got the fish van. So where did you go in relation to the fish van first?
I would say I turned round. I was at the back of it. I can't say with certainty which side, but maybe got to there.
So that red circled number 1 seems to be at the rear driver's side.
Yeah.
What direction were you facing when you got to the fish van?
Well, I turned round to see what was going on behind me. Do you want me to carry on?
Tell us what you saw when you turned round.
I turned round and I saw Mr. Bio lifting the three, my 3 male colleagues, PCs Tomlinson, Payton and Walker, off the ground and struggling.
Right.
With them, I mean, that he was.
Right. I wonder if we could look at another image and you can tell us where they all were.
Yeah.
So, if we could look, please. I think we had image 8 on the screen at one point earlier, and that might be the best image to start with. What area were they in?
Just roughly, kind of around, maybe that sort of area.
Right. And you've talked about Walker, Payton and Tomlinson being there.
Yeah.
From where you were at the van, the fish van, describe what position they were in.
I can't say for certain who was where, but I just remember Mr. Bio. I'm positive he was in a kind of press up position, and that's how he was gaining that's how he was trying to get up off the ground. And I just remember thinking those are three of the biggest guys on the shift, and he's managing to lift them up. It was like nothing I'd ever seen before in my life, that level of strength.
Right, you've said press up.
Yeah.
Now there may be some debate about what a press up is.
Yeah.
Could you don't have to do one, but could you come and show us what position Mr. Bio was in when he did this press up?
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. Where, if you can help us, where was PC Walker?
I can't say with certainty. I just remember turning around and seeing the 3 guys, the 3 officers, I mean, struggling with them. Like he was just about overcoming them, if you know what I mean. And I just remember the 3, but I can't say with certainty. I just remember being like horrified, because I had a genuine belief he was going to get up and finish me off.
So you've demonstrated the position that Mr. Bio was in.
Mm-hmm.
And a moment ago you've talked about him lifting the 3 officers off the ground and struggling.
Yeah.
Where were the 3 officers at the point that Mr. Bio was on the ground in that position?
To the side of them. It's kind of like, again, I can't tell you which was which, but from memory, I want to say maybe like one at each side, at the arm bit, and then maybe one behind, the one of them on the left of Mr. Bio, if that helps any.
Yeah, let's look at that. So Mr. Biles on the ground, and you said one at each side at the arm bit.
Yeah, both his arms, sorry.
So one at each of his arms,
Yeah.
Mr. Biles' arms.
Yeah.
And if he was trying to lift them off the ground, how were they positioned in relation to Mr. Bile?
Well, one was at each arm. They were kind of kneeling down. Sorry, I just remember the struggle essentially, but that's the general layout of the memory of it I have. Is that?
And you've said one was behind on the left.
Yeah, so if say the left, so if one person was getting or trying to get my arm here, and then the other was maybe behind and trying, I can't speculate on what they were trying to do, but I just mean if that person was trying to get my arm, they would be behind them, if that makes sense.
Could you see from your position in the fish van where Mr. Biles' head was?
It was like facing the pavement.
Facing the pavement. Is that the pavement where the houses were?
Yeah.
And was it closer to the roundabout with Henry Road or further back?
I couldn't honestly say. I couldn't honestly say, sorry.
Was he completely on the pavement, or was he at an angle, or was he on the road?
I don't know. It was just...
You see the red
yeah.
circle that you've drawn is half on the pavement, half
right,
on
yeah.
the road. Are you comfortable with that position?
Yeah, because from my memory anyway, it's there or thereabouts type of thing.
And when you say that one was behind on the left, as you looked at that event unfolding, did you recognise who was behind on the left?
No, and I just, I suppose, like to add as well that was just like a snapshot. Like I say, he was violently struggling with them to the point that I think that even, well, I thought so much so he was going to break free from the three officers. I've totally forgot my train of thought, sorry.
That's okay. So as you're looking from the fish van, when you say there was an officer behind on the left, are you meaning behind Mr. Bio on his left, or are you meaning as you looked at the events unfolding, he was on the left?
He was on Mr. Bio's left, but behind the officer in front that had, or was trying to gain control of, like, one of Mr. Bio's arms.
Okay, so on Mr. Bio's left.
Yeah.
And you could see him struggling, and at that moment, what did you do?
I turned back around and immediately thought I need to create as much distance between me and him as possible. So I staggered to the transit van, which was further away.
Right, can we go back, please, to image 5? So you've described how you were at the rear, really on the driver's side of the fish van, and then show us where you went to in relation to the transit van. And if you want an arrow, that would, we can put that on for you.
I'm trying to remember. So I think I kind of went from around that way. Stopped roughly there.
So although that's a straight line, is that you moving round the passenger side of the fish van?
Yeah.
Towards the transit van?
Yeah.
When you got to the transit van, what did you do?
At that point, I was struggling to breathe, and I was crying, and and looking back, I had the wind knocked out me. That's how it kind of felt. And then PC's Good and Smith arrived, and PC Smith shouted across, "Are you all right?" But I couldn't answer him, just because I was between struggling to breathe and crying. And then PC Goods came over to me, and PC Smith ran off in the direction of where the other officers were with Mr. Bio.
Did you actually go into that transit van?
Not initially. I stopped when I saw their car, and when I saw them, and they kind of engaged with me, and Kaylee came over with me to me. I mean, I stood there and trying to string the words together, and then I went into the van.
From your position at the transit van, could you see anything of what was going on?
No.
No. And can I ask you to look at paragraph 19 of your inquiry statement? And this is with regard to the strain. Mr. Bio's face was towards the ground, but he wasn't flat on the ground. It's best described as a press-up position, with the 3 officers trying to push him fully onto the ground. And do you remember the officers trying to push Mr. Bio fully onto the ground?
Yeah. Yeah.
Sheku Bio was incredibly strong in resisting the attempts to put him fully on the ground, to the extent that he lifted all 3 officers. I can't describe the restraint in any more detail. I was in shock and concussed. I can vividly remember what I've described, but I can't tell you what officer was there, where, in terms of who was on the left or right of Sheku Bio.
Yeah.
Thank you. And then you've talked about PC Good. Is that PC Kaylee Good?
Yeah.
And PC Alan Smith.
Yeah.
Coming to speak to you.
Yeah.
At the transit van.
Yeah.
Can I ask you to look, please, at Perk 253, which was your first statement. And I'd like to look at page 5, please. So this is Perk 253, statement 13th of May 2015. So 10 days after the events, and I'd like to look at page 5, and it's towards the bottom of that page. It's paragraph 7. And you said there, when I look back on the situation, there is nothing else we could have done differently, or I could have done differently. The man was deranged with superhuman strength, and in my mind intent on killing someone. I have no idea how he died, but it was unavoidable. It's the reference to the man being deranged with superhuman strength.
Mm-hmm.
And what part of the events does that description that you're applying to Mr. Bio?
Yeah. I would say initially with the superhuman strength element came with the PAVA and the CS spray having absolutely no effect on him whatsoever. To me, again, as I've mentioned, with the experience I've had of it, you've almost no choice to be incapacitated to it. And then the next one was the strength that he showed by lifting those 3 male officers up off the ground.
Right. And as I understand it, CS spray can incapacitate a strong, fully grown man.
Yeah.
Is that your experience?
Yeah.
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 So the superhuman strength is more to do with when he was being restrained and lifting the officers, is it?
Yeah. Yeah.
Now, as I understand your statement to the inquiry, it's been 7 years since you were a police officer, and you don't have a clear recollection now of all the training and the standard operating procedures.
No.
Right. Well, you said that in paragraph 39. I just wanted to check
Okay.
that that's the position. So I'm not going to go into all the details with you
Okay.
for that reason. But looking back now, could you help describe the sort of level of force that was being used by the 3 officers to try and restrain Mr. Bio to the ground?
I would say that it was completely in line with the level of violence and resistance shown by Mr. Bio. And in actual fact, Mr. Bio was bordering on overcoming them.
Okay. And then you've talked about Smith and Good coming to speak to you. Do you remember Samantha Davidson coming to speak to you?
I remember when I was in the van, I was sat in the passenger side, and then she opened the driver's side, and that's about all the memory I've got.
Was that the front passenger side of the transit
The transit van, yeah.
And then, was it DI Colin Robson took you to Victoria Hospital?
Yeah.
And how were you feeling at that time?
Well, I remember looking down, and I remember my police issue trousers being soaking wet. My belt was all around the wrong way. The front of me was wet because it had been raining that day. And I remember my radio was upside down, the earpiece was out, and I felt... Sorry, I can't find the words. Physically, I felt sore. Sore head, knees, hands, side. And emotionally, I just felt absolutely broken, to be honest. I described when I burst out crying in the van, and it was just myself. When I'd compare it to when like a child really, really cries, like not just. That's the only way I can describe it. If you hear a child crying and you think, oh, they've had a sore one, that's how I would describe my crying. And I was shaking with fear, adrenaline. I couldn't catch my breath. I was still crying. It took a while, or what felt like a while, to tell PC Good that Mr. Bio had punched me. Yeah.
And as you were describing that, when you said your side, you gestured to your right side,
Yeah.
is that right?
Yeah.
Thank you. Do you know how your belt became twisted?
No.
Do you know when that happened?
No, I mean, all I can say is when I took my baton out, and in the short time that, you know, when he was closing the distance between myself and Mr. Bio, you know, when I looked down, it was straight, it was where everything should be, the buckle at the front, or the clip, I should say, sorry, at the front. And then afterwards, it just wasn't.
So it was in the right place when you were mirroring Mr. Bio in the path, and then when you pulled your baton
Yeah.
out. But in the transit van, you realised it had moved.
Yeah, it was outside. It was before I got into the van. I just looked down and, yeah.
Thank you. I want to make sure I've got all of the evidence from you about the scene. What I'd like to do
Yeah.
now is maybe go through some of the statements that are in the black folder. Okay. So if we could start with the one from the 13th of May, that's the first statement, Perk 253. And I'm going to look first of all at page 2. And they're very short paragraphs here. It's paragraph 8. So it was there in the screen there. It starts Craig and Alan's van.
Yeah.
And that was just Craig and Alan's van was parked near the bus stop, and they were both out of the van and both had their sprays out. And that's what you told us earlier, isn't it?
Yeah.
Right. And I'd like to just carry on looking at that page, just down to the bottom of that page. So if we can move up a little. Thank you. Stop, please. Just move down a little. That's fine. And you've talked about them screaming at the man and what they said. And you say any normal person would have been left in no uncertain terms to get back. However, the guy paid no attention and kept going towards them aggressively as if he was going to attack them. Do you remember saying that when this statement was taken?
I mean, yeah, words to those effect, yes. Yeah.
Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but earlier you talked about him having clenched fists.
Yeah.
Was that's not mentioned there, but was that how you realised he was aggressive or doing it aggressively? Was it the clenched fists or was it something else?
It was probably that mixed with the lack of kind of engagement back to us, lack of communication. I just personally found that quite frightening. It's really unusual that you would get somebody have no communication with you, like none whatsoever.
To say nothing at all?
Yeah.
Had you ever experienced that before?
No, never.
And then you talk about Alan and Craig are both big guys. They're tall and well built, but the guy showed no fear and was going towards them. I remember thinking, shit, this is real, to such an extent that I shouted out, oh fuck. I was absolutely terrified at what I was witnessing. And you say Alan and Craig are both big guys.
Mm-hmm.
Were you conscious that they were bigger than the male?
It's not a thought that went through my mind at the time. I think what I meant by that was they were both, they're both tall. Like I say, they're both big guys. And I suppose maybe, when I'm sitting here now, I look back and I think they were both, like the experience that they both had as well. But I now know obviously that they're taller. They were taller than Mr. Bio.
We've heard they were 6'4".
Yeah, okay.
And then you say, I've never ever seen a more frightening, crazy man in my life, and I could see he was completely out of control. Was that your impression at the time?
Yeah.
And you've said you've never ever seen a more frightening, crazy man in your life. Mm-hmm. What was it about the way he appeared or his demeanour at that time mm-hmm. that caused you to view him in that way? The
walking on a mission, not listening to a word we were saying. It was like there was nothing there. His pupils were big and black, and there was just nothing we were saying was registering. I remember saying was registering. He wasn't listening to any direction from us. He was kind of just doing what he wanted, and then the more frightening thing for me was seeing the spray not working on him. And that, again, it's something we were taught about, but I'd never seen it before, and then it was just so out of control, and yeah.
If we've heard that Sheikh was 12 stone 10,
mm-hmm.
and 5 feet 10. If he'd been white, would that have made him seem different to you? And
Absolutely not.
why do you say that?
Because the actions would have been the same. You know, the walking away, the spray not working, the colour of his skin had absolutely no bearing on how we reacted to that call whatsoever.
Okay. And then can I ask Miss Wilgus to move on to the next page, page 3, please. And at the top of this page, you see Alan and Craig had no option but to spray him, and they did so as I jumped out of the van. So was that your recollection on the 13th of May, that as you jumped out of the van, they sprayed Shekubau?
Well, yeah, on the 13th of May, yeah.
Yeah. And does that differ from your recollection now?
I'd say when I was asked in kind of broken down questions, that I could pinpoint it kind of moment by moment, whereas that's quite a generalised sentence.
Yeah. I wonder if we could go back to the enhanced video timeline then, because this obviously is moment by moment, you know, about the real time clock. And if we can look maybe just prior to when your van stops, so just prior to 7:20 and 39, or just 7:20, 39 be fine. Right, so we're on 7:20 and 37 at the moment, and you'll see that the vans come into view, so the transit van's there, and then at 7:20:39 we'll see yours. So what I'm going to do is just ask Miss Wildgoose to play a short segment to around say 7:21. That would be fine, thanks.
He's described as male, black, well-built, 6 foot tall, wearing a white t-shirt, dark-coloured jeans and carrying a very large knife.
Commander 4, control, keep off us. Somebody activated the emergency button.
That's lovely, thank you. So let's go back to 7:20:39 if we can. And you will have seen the smaller van arriving at this moment. And do you want to have the spreadsheet in front of you, please? And you'll see on page 3, towards the bottom of page 3, 7:20:39. And it says, smaller police van stops at Hayfield Road. Do you see that in the description?
Yeah.
Just before reaching where persons are behind large police van. You see that?
Yeah.
And then it appears that the driver's side door on the smaller police van opens and a person gets out. And that will have been PC Tomlinson.
Yeah.
And then it says at 7:20:42, PC Alan Payton's emergency status is turned on. And I think you said earlier you weren't conscious of that.
Yeah.
And then it says, appears person who exited driver's side door on smaller van moves around in front of the smaller van, and a person who'd been standing at the rear of the larger police van moves and walks behind the smaller police van towards the direction of the roundabout. And so what I'd like to do is just look at that again and then maybe ask you to comment on that.
Okay.
So if we start at the 7:20:39, but it's 1:38 at the moment, we'll just play that, and if you look at the CCTV, you'll see the movement, and then we'll get to 7:20:50 or something along those lines. Thank you.
It's described as male, black, well-built, 6 foot tall, wearing a white t-shirt, dark-coloured jeans and carrying a very large knife.
Thank you. If we could just stop there. Can you see the movement of people in the CCTV as we go through it?
Yeah.
Is that effectively the events you described when you were getting out the van? You arrived, you get out the van and you see the other officers on the scene?
Yeah.
Thank you. So when you got out the van, PC Walker wasn't at the front of his van, hidden from view from you?
No.
No. And did you at any time see PC Walker on the driver's side of his van?
Not that I remember, no.
And when they were touching their eyes after the sprays had been used, that was on the passenger side of the transit van,
Yeah.
not the other side.
Yeah, from my memory, it was the passenger side.
And then I'm going to be moving on to look at the CCTV in relation to the path,
Okay.
but I'm conscious it's 1 o'clock.
Okay.
And
Sit at 2 o'clock.
thank you.
Very well.